Over the last several years, I've become very, very concerned and frightened by the significant increase in anti-Semitism around the world and certainly also in our own country.
When they said Jews will not replace us, that bothered me. And what bothered me even more, that there were no consequences to any of those people afterwards.
The public has to react. It's all dangerous. You have to speak out against it.
I hope some days people grow up and just throw away that bitterness and treat people, every and each one, at the same level.
Skills used to survive in the Holocaust do indeed also apply in everyday life today.
The acts that I saw started with trivial, small items. There was a sign on the park bench that said, "This bench is not for Jews." It didn't take long for those acts to grow into gas chambers. The thing that I think society should learn is that bigotry, racial hatred can't be tolerated even at the very beginning.
I think you have to be informed what's going on, know your resources.
I survived, and the reason was that my parents had a close friends, a Christian family. Man of the family, Dr. Schultz, he was the chief judge in our city. He had information when they were going to come and pick up the Jewish people in town. And he had a way to inform us in advance. Later on, I figured it out over the years that there was a problem also on the part of the Jewish community. We were very insulated. We did not really understand the value of mingling with other people around us. And that was a big mistake.
Overall, the people from the world should care for each other. I don't care what domination you are. I care for humanity.
Beyond that, I think each and every one of us needs to take a stand. I also recommend to students I speak to that they attend town halls that are sponsored by Congresspeople and U.S. senators to make our voices heard.
We need more empathy in the world. The goal is to reach out and share our common values.
Well, my advice would be to our Jewish people in this country, please get out of your house and look for other people and befriend them. They are no different from us, and I think it would be a very healthy thing for us.
Whom you meet and you want to talk to them. Very important.
I have a lot of hope and a lot of faith in our country.
I feel pretty good about our future here. Even though with what's going on, we need to be aware of it. We need to be a little bit cautious. We need to keep our eyes and ears open.
I think we have to have hope. We've got some amazing people out there.
I am very glad that the Anti-Defamation League has stood up and confronted these hate groups that exist in our country.
We've got a lot of strengths in this community, in this country. So I recommend bring your talents and let's together work on this world and make it a better, safer place.
Good evening, everybody. Just a reminder to please silence your cell phones. My name is Cheryl Filer, and I am board chair of the ADL Mountain States region. Welcome to ADL's 44th annual Governor's Holocaust Remembrance Program. We welcome all of those joining us at home on our live stream as well. For 44 years, ADL has worked together with each sitting Colorado governor to memorialize the victims of the Holocaust, to honor Holocaust survivors, and to pass on the lessons that we have learned. For tonight's keynote presentation, Colorado Senate President Pro Tem Daphna Michelson-Janae will interview Holocaust survivor Peter Metzelar, who will share with us his story of survival as a hidden child in Holland. Thank you, Pete, for coming all the way from Seattle to be with us tonight. We look forward to hearing from you later in the program. We've come together this evening in the spirit of ADL's mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. At this time, I'd like to recognize the primary sponsors that have generously underwritten tonight's event. Thank you to the Curtis Lusher and Lusher families, the Choate Foundation and family, Michael and Debbie Feiner and the Feiner Family Foundation, Jewish Colorado, GSR Fund and Gregory Rosenblum and family, Ruth Malman and Michael Opatowski, the M.B. Glassman Foundation, MDC Richmond American Homes Foundation, Spencer Fain LLP, and the University of Denver. Thank you to all our sponsors. We'd also like to thank the Feiner Family Foundation for providing, at no cost, a selection of newly framed prints from the powerful Triumphant Spirit exhibition displayed in the lobby and in the social hall this evening. The photographs were created by Nick Del Calzo, who was inspired after a visit to Dachau concentration camp in Germany. The selection of photos in the lobby tonight features Colorado Holocaust survivors. The exhibition represents an enduring legacy of Holocaust survivors who found their way to America's shores, created new lives and families, and built successful businesses, many of them in Colorado. Over the years, these survivors have become beacons of hope and humanity. The historical body of work not only documents war and tragedy, but also offers testimonials from unique Jews who overcame astonishing odds to survive. To order a copy of the Triumphant Spirit book with photos by Nick Del Calzo and biographies written by Jewish Colorado CEO Renee Rockford, please scan the QR code printed in your program. We are also pleased to announce tonight that thanks to a visionary gift from Marshall and Helene Abrams and the Feiner Family Foundation, DU Center for Judaic Studies is proud to announce the Emil and Eva Hecht Visiting Professorship in Holocaust and Anti-Semitism Studies. The Hecht Professor will teach undergraduate and graduate courses about the Holocaust, as well as historical and contemporary anti-Semitism. This is the first step in an effort to endow a chair in Holocaust and anti-Semitism studies within DU's Center for Judaic Studies. Holocaust survivors Emil and Eva Hecht were beloved Denver community members, and this generous visiting position is a testimony to their legacy and love of Jewish education. In addition to our esteemed donors, we also offer our sincere thanks to all the members of our Honorary Host Committee and to our many community partners, including several public officials, the names of who were displayed on the slideshow just prior to the program. The members of the Honorary Host Committee are also listed in your print program. In just a few minutes, you will hear a message to Colorado from our Governor Jared Polis. In addition to Governor Polis, we are grateful to have several public officials and their representatives with us tonight. All of you are leading us toward a more respectful and secure society. I would ask that those public officials that have joined us this evening please stand and be recognized. We appreciate them being here, and we thank them for their support. Each member of ADL's dedicated regional staff has played a vital role in making tonight's event possible. Regional Director Susan Rona, Senior Associate Director of Jewish Community Engagement and the producer of tonight's program, Sue Parker Gerson, Senior Associate Director Jeremy Shaver, Director of Development Susie Moss, Associate Director of Development Kara Schell, Regional Coordinator Chloe Hodson, Regional Intern Talia Richland, and the two newest members of our team, Assistant Regional Director Nash Levitt and Education and Policy Director Scott Melton. Thank you as well to ADL board members Gay Curtis Lusher, Joanne Kleinstein, and Sarla Thal for co-chairing tonight's event. In addition, we recognize the Corps of Volunteers, including graduates of ADL's Robert B. Sturm Mountain States Leadership Fellows and ADL Mountain States Regional Board members. We also offer special thanks to Temple Emanuel and the Temple Emanuel AV team. At this time, I would like to say a special thank you and invite Temple Emanuel Senior Rabbi Joe Black to the podium.
Welcome to Temple Emanuel. At a time when footsteps of intolerance are echoing in the halls of legislators and in the streets and minds of our nation, we need moments like this to come together, to share our resolve, to share our concerns, to learn from the past, and to promise never to repeat it again. Temple Emanuel is honored to be able to convene this and to host this very, very important event. We are thrilled to welcome you all here, and it is now my honor to invite my colleague and friend, Rabbi Barry Gelman of the Denver Kehillah, to issue an invocation.
Dear God, Eternal One, source of all life, memory, and justice, we gather in reverence today to honor the 6 million Jews murdered in the Shoah and countless individuals marked as other, whose lives were turned away by hatred, indifference, and evil. We remember the lives they built in the pre-war years, rich Jewish and cultural lives. We remember them not as numbers, but as souls, mothers, fathers, children, artists, scholars, neighbors, L'kulam shemot yikra, each with a name, a story, and a sacred light, Tselem Elokim, extinguished too soon. We lift up the courage of survivors, whose resilience bore witness to unspeakable horror, yet who built lives, shared their truths, and kindled the torch of remembrance for future generations. Rabbi Yitz Greenberg taught the Holocaust confronts us with the most radical evil known to humanity, and it calls us to the most radical response, the affirmation of life, dignity, and responsibility. And now in our own time, we confront the painful and urgent truth that anti-Semitism is rising again in our communities across the nation and around the world. Once again, lies are weaponized, conspiracy dressed as truth, and hate allowed to flourish in the open. We call upon you, O God of justice and compassion, to strengthen our resolve, to speak out when others are silent, to stand up when others shrink back, to remember that never again is not a slogan, but a promise. We know that hatred directed at one vulnerable group often sets a dangerous precedent, as it creates an environment where discrimination is normalized and other marginalized and minority communities become targets as well. History has shown us that when one group is dehumanized, it emboldens others to continue a cycle of hatred. Elie Wiesel has taught us the crucial lesson that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Echoing what the rabbis taught, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor v'lo ata ben chorin lihibatel mimena, reminding us that the world's oldest hatred may never be eradicated, but we are not free from the responsibility to do our part. Dear God, bless this gathering and all people with the clarity to remember, the courage to resist anti-Semitism and hatred in all its forms, and the commitment to build a world where dignity triumphs over cruelty and love overcomes fear. And let us respond, Amen.
Good evening. My name is Sarla Thal, and I'm honored to be one of the co-chairs for this event. And I'm also on the board, the regional board for the Anti-Defamation League. The interviews that you saw earlier in the Survivors Speak video, screened at the start of this program tonight, was filmed on March 3rd, 2020. We are so grateful that the ADL Board Chair Emerita, Susan Brody, along with members of her production company, Family Legacies Video, were able to capture such moving and inspiring testimony from Colorado Holocaust survivors. Ossie Sladek, Rosalind Kirkle, and from those who sadly are no longer with us, Eric Kahn, Peter Ney, and Fanny Starr, and may their memories always be a blessing. In a few moments, we will be lighting our regional's unique and newly restored Holocaust Memorial candelabra. Its 6 candles represent the over 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. We also honor and remember over 5 million others who were murdered by the Nazi regime, simply for their identities, who they were, including disabled children and adults, gay men, members of the Roma community, Jehovah's Witnesses, political dissidents, and more. We also recognize the impact of the Holocaust on those that, despite the efforts of the Nazis, survived the Shoah and lived to have children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who are with us today to bear witness. At this time, I would like to invite the members of the survivor community that would like to come up. Please do so, come to the bema, and we would like to have you participate in the candle lighting ceremony, if you're able. We also invite, Cantor Elizabeth Sachs, who will shortly chant our memorial prayer, to join up here. So if you'd like to come up. Today, as we remember all the victims of the Holocaust, living and deceased, as we light this candelabra.
Hi, everybody. My name's Joanne Kleinstein, and I am proud and honored to be an ADL Regional Board member and a co-chair of tonight's program. As we prepare for the memorial prayer that marks this hallowed evening, I'd ask that you refrain from any applause. At this time, I ask that all survivors who honor us with their presence here tonight, please stand as you are able and remain standing. If you're a child of a Holocaust survivor, I'd ask that you please stand as you're able and remain standing. If you're the grandchild, niece, nephew, or otherwise related to someone who either survived or was lost in the Holocaust, Please stand as you're able and remain standing. And finally, I ask that the rest of us stand as we're able in memory of all of those that were murdered simply because of their identity. At this time, I invite Cantor Elizabeth Sachs of Temple Emanuel to chant the Ele Mali Rachamim Memorial Prayer. You'll find the English translation in your program.
El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamsei Menuchanechona Tachat kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Udorim Kezoar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmot Shisha Million Achinu Ve'achyoteinu Shenergu Al Kiddush Hashem Barachamim Yastireim Beseder Kenafav Leolamim Ve'yitzror b'yitzror hachayim Et nishmatam Adonai Unachalatam Ve'anuchu b'shalom Al mishkavam Benomar Amen. You may be seated. It is now my honor to introduce Susan Rona, who began her tenure as the ADL Mountain States Regional Director in January of this year. Susan comes to this role as an established community leader through her work in helping to build the Boulder JCC, and because of her passion and dedication to the Jewish community and to standing up to all forms of hatred and bias. Susan.
Thank you, Cantor Sachs, for chanting so beautifully and for your kind introduction. I'd like to take a special moment to honor Shelley Steinhauser, who is with us today. 44 years ago, Shelley had the vision and courage to establish this vital program creating a sacred space where the testimonies of Holocaust survivors and witnesses could be preserved and shared in community across generations. This legacy of remembrance has been lovingly stewarded for many years by different staff members of the ADL, and most recently, for the past 12 years, by Sue Parker-Gerson. Sue has guided this program with extraordinary dedication and compassion, and the profound bonds Sue has formed with each survivor speaker stand as a testament to her exceptional heart and her understanding of the sacred trust involved in carrying these stories forward. Thank you. So I want to share a little story, and it's Friday morning. I'm nearing a workout. My phone lights up with a call from my daughter's school. I pause, turn down the music, and answer. It's one of her teachers. She tells me that Katie has had a rough day and that I should know that something happened at school before she gets home. I feel that familiar tightening in my chest. The teacher explains that during some free time, Katie and a few classmates are hanging out. One of the girls is showing some ballet moves, and she says to the group, "Hey, be careful with this one. My ballet teacher always used to tell us to use soft elbows, because if you don't, it can look like a Heil Hitler salute." At that moment, a boy in the group stretched out his arm and said, "Heil Hitler." The school takes the moment seriously. They bring together Katie, the other students who witnessed it, the boy who made the gesture, and a teacher. Katie speaks up and says to the boy, "You know what? That was really offensive. Not just to all Jewish people, but to me personally. My Nana was born in hiding during the Holocaust, and my great aunt survived Auschwitz. By making that gesture, you are praising the people who terrorized and killed my family." The boy apologizes. He says he feels stupid. He's new to the school. He really likes it. And he doesn't quite know why he responded the way he did. The school contacts his parents, and the teacher explains that this is the reason for the call to me, to keep me informed. I listen, I take it in. I thank the teacher. The school responded quickly and thoughtfully. But I want to go further. I say, let's lean into this. I'm so proud that Katie made this a learning moment and not a shaming one. And I knew that there was more that we could do together to educate. But before any of this could happen, the boy takes my breath away. On Monday morning, when Katie walks into school, he approaches her, nervous, a little shy, and says, "Katie, I felt really badly about what happened on Friday. I baked you a challah." Katie is stunned. She throws her arms around him and thanks him for the incredible gift. And in the days that follow, we keep talking about that challah. Because when someone makes an anti-Semitic remark or any hateful comment, it's not just that you feel invisible. It's as if someone looks right at you and says, "You don't have any value." But this boy, he chose something else. And I have to think it's in part because Katie shared her personal story. He looked up our culture. He got his hands in dough. He waited for it to rise. He braided it. He thought. And we wonder, what was he thinking during those quiet moments? It made us think of this larger moment we're all in. And even though this happened several years ago, we keep coming back to it and learning from it. How do we, in this time of instant outrage, Pause long enough to teach instead of punish? When someone says something cruel, ignorant, or thoughtless, can we ask, hey, what was that about? And I know that we can all think back to a time when we have said or done something hurtful. How do we show someone that we see them and that we're trying to make it right? Sometimes I wish social media had a button, a symbol you could click on to show your values, your culture, your story. I know now that what mine would be. It would be a holla. What would yours be? Yesterday, ADL released its 2024 audit of anti-Semitic incidents that showed in Colorado a 41% increase year over year. The national average is 5%. Colorado is 41%. This year, Colorado is ninth in the nation for anti-Semitic incidents. Incidents including coordinated bomb threats to 10 synagogues on the same day in cities and towns across Colorado, including Aspen, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Denver, and Grand Junction, and other very personal attacks, like a mezuzah being pulled off the doorpost of someone's house, and a person checking out at a grocery store and being harassed by the cashier simply because they were wearing a Jewish star. What if you were one of these individuals who experienced anti-Semitism? How would you have handled it? Well, you don't have to figure it out alone. When you report incidents to ADL, we provide resources and support, and it's also really critical because it helps us to identify trends and start addressing them. We all have a role to play in this fight against anti-Semitism. We need to speak up, find our voices, tell our stories. If we don't, who will? I know that you all have flyers. We have a lot of Holocaust survivors in our community, and JFS supports them through the Claims Conference, and I just wanted to mention that you all have flyers. If you can reach out to JFS's website and support our local survivors. This year, we will not be doing the essay contest, but we'll look forward to doing that next year. And I wanted to take a moment while we're in community to think of the 59 hostages still in captivity. Thank you. I now invite Gay Curtis Lesher to the podium. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I don't. Hi, Governor Polis. I now invite Ian Sieb to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Ian Sieb, and I have been an ADL Regional Board member since 2009. I've also served as Governor Polis's Special Advisor on Cannabis and Natural Medicine for 6 years. In this time, I've had the tremendous privilege to watch his leadership on issues important to this community. Throughout his time in office, Governor Polis has worked to build a Colorado for all, where every person can thrive in safe communities. We see this in action in good times and during challenging moments. For example, when Governor Polis, his administration, and state lawmakers worked quickly to create a state-level nonprofit security grant program to help protect Jewish institutions and other vulnerable spaces, and increased dollars to that program post-October 7th. The state continues to serve as a partner to the ADL, evaluating opportunities for additional collaboration and support. Especially at this time of alarmingly heightened anti-Semitism, we're grateful to have Governor Polis's support and leadership, and we welcome him to share remarks at this time.
Thank you, Ian. We appreciate having you as part of our office these last 6 years, and very honored to have done the great work with you that we have, and a lot more ahead. For 44 years, ADL Mountain States Region and the governor's office across several different governors have come together to commemorate, educate, and honor the memory of those that were lost in the Holocaust. I want to thank ADL Board Chair Cheryl Filer, ADL Regional Director Susan Rona, who we just heard from, and of course, Temple Emanuel, thank you for hosting tonight. 80 years since the end of the Holocaust. For the survivors that are with us, that means if someone was, of course, 20 and when they made it, they are 100 years old today, and there are some in our community in Israel, across the United States, across the world, and of course far more that didn't make it. And as those firsthand stories become increasingly scarce, I'm increasingly grateful for the documentary work that's been done by Steven Spielberg and others in recent history, taking the life stories into account. We looked up, my husband Marlon had a cousin who was a survivor. He lost one branch of his family in the Holocaust, but he had a cousin that made it out, now late, of course, but participated in the Shoah Project and had an extensive, 3-hour interview that we watched with the kids, and it really brought to life his experiences, mostly in hiding, like many of the survivors. He was brought to a camp near the end of the war and thankfully made it out, but mostly his story in hiding in Poland and undercover and all the challenges that he faced. And those stories are very powerful. And we cherish the opportunity to hear firsthand from Holocaust survivors like Peter Melzahar, who's here with us today. And we need to hold those stories close. And as they, of course, first and foremost, honor those we lost, celebrate those who made it out, but more importantly, make sure that in our own lives and in our own vision for our future, make sure we bring realization to the words never again. With anti-Semitism reaching record levels here, the statistic was cited, the increase in Colorado, it's even worse in many places across the world. We know that anti-Semitism is sadly not relegated to history, and if you doubt that, just check out social media for a few minutes and you'll see exactly what that means. We heed the call of never again, and that promise is fulfilled through our actions and commitment to make sure that history never repeats itself. And as we celebrate Colorado's vibrant Jewish community and the rich tapestry of backgrounds and cultures that make up our state, it should be an important reminder that hate does not prevail. Hate against Jews, hate against immigrants, hate against people who are different, have no place in a Colorado for all, I hope, have no place in the United States of America, and frankly have no place in the world, where people should be accepted for who they are and what they believe. In 2020, I was proud to sign into law Colorado's first Holocaust and genocide education law, requiring that all students in our state's public high schools learn about the horrors of the Holocaust and genocide. It's been 5 years since then, and in high school classrooms across our state, students learn about what never again means, what it requires, education, and of course, constant vigilance. We've been focused on providing nonprofit security grants to support physical security measure at houses of worship. And of course, many of those who have been threatened are houses of worship of the Jewish community. Of course, there's also been targeted houses of worship of the Muslim community, the Christian community, and we have been able to get millions of dollars in grants out for additional security steps for places of worship, including synagogues. And we want to continue to make sure that Colorado is a place where everybody can be who they are and worship as they see fit. And that's important in this juncture in time when it can be difficult and people are setting one against another, to remember and make sure we realize the lesson never again in our own lives and in our work. 80 years on since the end of the Holocaust, the absolute end of over 6 million Jewish lives, millions of others, and of course, the destruction of the tapestry of life for those who came out, who we celebrate only not even being able to imagine the horrors that they experienced for their everyday lives for matters of months or years during that time. And gatherings like this one are extremely important to come together, yes, every year formally, but also in our lives throughout the year. There was a meme going around social media a couple of years ago. How many times a week do you think about the Roman Empire? It turns out men think about the Roman Empire more than women, but most men, I'm one, we think of the Roman Empire several times a week, and that was shocking to some people. But I think we should also ask ourselves, how often do we think of the Holocaust? It's not just today. It's not just on the anniversary. Doesn't have to be every moment of every day, although it lives with us, that shared experience. But specifically, in tidbits of news and things that we see, is it daily, is it weekly, is it monthly? How often do we reflect on the history that we've experienced as a people, and of course, the lessons that we've learned to ensure that it never happens again? And physical gatherings like this are an important time to come together, remember, recommit to the promise of never again, but it extends far beyond these physical gatherings, to our own minds, to our dinner tables, to casual conversations throughout the year and throughout the years to come. On behalf of the state of Colorado, it's my honor to help observe the Holocaust Remembrance Day with you, and I thank you for the solemn procession. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Polis, for your insightful and supportive remarks. I am Gay Curtis Lusher, and I gotta organize this. I am an ADL regional board member and co-chair, and along with my family, a sponsor of tonight's events, it is my honor to welcome Colorado State President Pro Tem Daphne Michelson-Jeannet and Holocaust survivor Peter Metzeler. Senator Daphne Michelson-Jeannet was a member of the Colorado House of Representatives for 7 years before moving on to the Senate, where she was recently elected President pro tempore. Her legislative work primarily focuses on youth, particularly foster youth, mental health, and healthcare access. In 2021, she created the I Matter program, a successful program that allows any school-age child to obtain 6 free sessions of therapy if they so choose. Over 11,000 Colorado young people have taken advantage of this program. Further areas of advocacy by her lifelong efforts to increase education about the Holocaust and genocide. In 2020, Senator Michelson-Jeannet successfully created and passed an historic bill mandating inclusion of Holocaust and genocide education in high school curricula in the state of Colorado. Prior to this, she served as the director of the Holocaust Awareness Institute of the University of Denver, as well as the director of March of the Living for the Board of Jewish Education of Greater New York. The senator also served as president of the Denver chapter of Hadassah on the Desert Mountain region and on Hadassah's National Portfolio Council. Peter Metzeler Our guest, whose story you are about to hear, was born in Amsterdam in 1935. In 1942, when Peter was only 7, the Nazis seized Peter's entire family, except for Peter and his mother. With help from the Dutch underground, Peter and his mother found shelter with Klaas and Rufina Post, who agreed to shelter Peter and his mother on their small farm in northern Holland for much of the war, putting their own lives at risk. Peter, his mother, and his aunt were the only survivors of his family. Klaas and Rufina Post have been recognized as righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem. Peter and his mother immigrated to the United States in 1949. Now living in Seattle with his wife, Bea, he is an active member of the Holocaust Center for Humanities Speaker Bureau, which has arranged for him to join us here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Senator Daphne Michaelson-Jeannet and Peter Metzeler for tonight's keynote conversation.
All right, Peter, you ready to have a conversation?
Let's give it a shot.
All right, we'll give it a shot. You were very young when the Nazis took over the Netherlands. I understand that your mother got in touch with the underground and found you shelter on a farm. Will you tell us more about that?
Yes, I remember when I tell my story of Remembrance, looking out an old apartment, 4-story apartment that Mom, Dad, and I lived in, and being awakened one night when it was very quiet and trucks pulled up to the apartment complex. And to this day, I will always remember the shrilling voices of those German soldiers in the quiet of the night yelling, "Alle Juden raus," all Jews out. Doors were being kicked in, women screaming, but they hadn't come to our door yet. But it became very clear in the next few weeks what happened to Dad. He had a little rowboat and he went fishing, but that was not allowed. In 1942, he took his little 2-man rowboat on one of the canals in Amsterdam. He was arrested, and that's the last time that we ever heard or saw him again. The underground, when I refer to underground, they were just individual people. One person in one block, 2 people in another block, whose attitude was, we gotta help. Incidentally, out of the 144,000 in this little country, out of the 144,000 Jews that lived there, 80% were murdered. It was the second highest percentage next to Poland. The underground, their big thing was false identification if you were to be stopped. But the most important thing was, were there people that would be willing to shelter a Jewish person or persons? Keeping in mind that if those people, those Jewish people, were to get caught, which was a rather likely situation, both the people that would offer the shelter, in this case, their name Klaas and Rufina Post, living on a small farm in the northern part of Holland, not only would Mom and I would be murdered, but so would Klaas, Rufina, and their entire family. I was always utterly amazed at the courage that those folks took. Not only did they work their fingers to the bone, and when I say a small farm, a couple of pigs, a couple of chickens, a couple of cows, and from sun up to sundown, they worked a little half-acre of ground raising veggies that they shared wholeheartedly. An interesting thing that, of course, I learned later on These people were very devout Christians, but they didn't care. The important thing to them was, who are these Germans coming across our border and taking our people away? We need to help. Religion didn't enter into it. We didn't know them. They didn't know us. And so it ended up that Mom and I were on that farm for over 2.5 years. And I would like to add the fact that in that 2.5 years, there was not a single time that neither Mom nor I could come outside during daylight hours. There were other farms in the area. And like in every other country, you got good people, you have bad people. If for some reason Mom and I were to come out and one of the neighbors saw us and they would wonder, who are they? We don't exist. We don't have a body. We don't have a soul. We don't exist. We can't talk to anybody. Only could I come out at night. In the back of the farm, Klaus had made some small toys I could play with, only when it got dark. Mom could take a breath of air. So it was a life of total incommunication with any human beings. When we got on that farm, I was almost not quite 7 years old. I knew bad things were happening. I can't say that my mom would actually literate what happened to Papi, what happened to Oma and Opa, what happened to Uncle and Tante Elsa. I knew very terrible things has happened. On that farm, the Germans started to find out that Jews were being hidden, and now the trucks came with dozens of soldiers. They would ransack these farms, stabbing in the haystacks with fixed bayonets, sometimes somebody hiding in there. If they came out and they were alive on a truck, and where did they go? Nobody knew. In those early days especially, somebody's aunt, somebody's father, somebody's mother didn't come home. What happened to them? People literally did not know. Where did they go and for what reason? People did not know. Well, the Germans started to, as I say, find out about Jews being hidden on the farm. And Klaus said, we got to hide you, not just on the property. And this old farm, and I mean old, when my mother and I got there, it was probably already 30 years old. No toilet facilities, had to go outside in an outhouse, no electricity. And the bottom of the farm, this old farm, was knotty pine floors. And Klaus came up with a brilliant idea. He took a saw in the joint of one of these 12-inch white boards, and he cut a 6-foot section in 2 areas, and then you opened up 12 feet, and underneath there, 1.5 foot underneath, was the dirt of this old farm. Now, when Mom and I heard the trucks coming down the road, we'd go into this little room, open up those boards, and jump in there. Klaus or Rufina would put the boards back on, throw a rug, couldn't see anything. And Mom and I would be body to body in the filth underneath this old farm. The Germans would be walking 1.5 feet over my head, over Mom and my head. All it would have taken is one sneeze, one hiccup, it would have been all over. Klaus even felt that this was too dangerous. We got to get you out of the house. And one day at dusk, and I want to emphasize the word dusk, as I referred to earlier, we could never come out during daylight hours. There was a small, maybe 1/2 acre of trees, a couple 100 feet from the farm. And Klaus told me to get a wheelbarrow and a couple of shovels. And we started to dig. And after about 1.5 days of digging at dusk, we ended up with a hole in the ground, in a little rise, 3 feet, 2 feet deep. Klaus cut down some trees, let them fall randomly, took the branches and interwove them in the front, had to kind of open up to get in. Now, When Mom and I heard the trucks coming down the road, we'd run out the back of the farm and crawl into this hole. We would barely fit in here. And there were two elements that I remember so very clearly that scared the you-know-what out of me. When we were laying, trembling in this cave, if you will, we could hear them, because it was only about 150 feet from the farm, but because of the camouflage in the front, couldn't see them. You could stand right in front, just blend in with nature. And the thing that scared me more than anything else, two elements. Every time Mom and I were body to body laying in this hole, dirt came trickling down. I was always afraid it was going to cave in. But the thing that scared me more than anything else, I could hear them, I couldn't see them, and what scared me is that this time they're going to come and get me. What did I do? I'm a little kid. Where's Dad? What is Mom and I doing in this hole? I couldn't hear if they were coming, but the mere fact I'm sitting here, they never did make it into that particular area.
Thank goodness. Hiding in The Hague, the next part of your story. So I understand that after 2 years, your mother became concerned that you were going to be found out, and it would be you and your mother and the Posts who would be murdered. Your mother sews a nurse's uniform to pass. How did you get out of The Hague?
The Hague and Amsterdam are approximately 45 miles apart. There were two ladies that, and the strange thing is, I remember so much of those decent, wonderful, compassionate people, Klaus and Rufina on the farm. I don't remember the names of these two women that gave us shelter. The Germans took over food production, so the people had to get stamps to get food, and we got the leftovers. There were many times that they were just not very nice. They wouldn't share what was ever left over with food. Speaking of this, I remember on two occasions, and Mom and I were on this apartment for approximately 8 months. I remember on two occasions that when it got dark, Mom disappeared for an hour, hour and a half. She came back with a loaf of bread. Don't ask. I don't know. I don't know where she got it. Anytime that there was any dirty work to be done, whether it was cleaning the floors, they would ask Mom to do it. It was so different. No compassion. I don't even understand why they gave us shelter, but we had to be thankful. They did give us shelter. As the war started to get to the negative aspect of Adolf and his Nazi regime, more and more the raids became constant, day in, day out. How my mom found out, I have no idea. And as I always tell when I talk to kids in school or anybody else, I only like to talk about what I literally remember. There is no drama, there's no Hollywood in this. But I remember asking her many, many times, how did you find this out? And she wouldn't answer. And what she found out, those women got scared that we would get caught, which means that would be the end of them. They were going to turn us in. We had to get out of there. And once again, through some decent people of the underground, how Mom got hold of one of those, I have no idea. They came back with a one-room apartment back in Amsterdam, where we started, 45 miles from there. Only problem, there was no such thing as transportation. No transportation, not only no transportation, but there's one highway that existed at that time was only used for military, German military transport. I wake up one night, and my mom is sitting at a little table, which appeared to be with a bunch of bed sheets, and she's sewing. I said, what are you doing? She says, go back to sleep. I wake up a couple of hours later, And she made a skirt, a top, a little hat. She made like equivalent to a nurse's uniform. I said, what are you doing? She says, get dressed. We got to get out of here. We had no belongings. It was wintertime. She bundled me up, bundled herself up, and wrapped this contraption around herself, and we tippy-toed out of the apartment. There was a curfew, so we had to be careful, every shadow that nobody would see us. And as we walked through the snow, I said, Mom, where are we going? She says, be quiet. I don't want to hear from you. Don't talk. As we continued to walk, by this time I'm 10 years old, all of a sudden I'm starting to realize something. I said, Mom, we're not going to this highway, are we? She says, Peter, we got to get to Amsterdam. I said, no, don't do that. Those are the people that represent, don't do that. I don't want to, I was petrified. She says, I'm not going to tell you one more time. Just keep your mouth shut, don't talk. As daylight came about, we get closer, and I see German SS marching, tanks on top of flatbed trucks. I am petrified. Now we get to the highway, and as I tell the kids, now Mom does something that I know the doo-doo is going to hit the fan. She starts to hitchhike. I said, what are you doing? She says, I told you to be quiet. A flatbed truck stopped, and an SS officer gets out. I have to add the fact that my mom was born originally in Berlin, moved to Holland, married my dad when she was 19. This Nazi officer comes out of the truck and starts to read my mother the riot act. What are you doing here? With a child, no civilians allowed. This is for the fatherland, blah, 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 blah. I have no idea why this guy would even allow my mom to talk. And very concisely, she says, you know, on one of the bombing raids, a bomb went astray and hit the apartment. The kid here, pointing at me, was living. It killed both his father and his mother. And she says, I'm a nurse for the International Red Cross, and I'm taking him to an orphanage in Amsterdam. I don't know what this guy, he didn't say a word. He grabbed my mother by the arm. I'm hanging on to her for dear life. She is my only security. We get to the truck, this long, whatever it was, flatbed truck, and now he separates me from my mother. I am out of my gourd. She's my only security. But he takes Mom, and he takes her to the front of the truck, and he helps her in the cab, next to the other SS officer, the driver. Now he comes back for me. I don't know what's going to happen. He doesn't say a word. He picks me up, puts me in the back of this flatbed truck in the truck, in the snow. I am sitting in the snow. This SS officer goes back to the cab, sits next to Mom. Mom is sitting between the SS officer, and they took us to Amsterdam. They didn't know there were a couple of Jews that they were helping getting where they wanted to go. I usually get loud. I shouldn't be because my wife tells me don't do that. But I still don't understand. How did she come up? How did she come up with this plan? Incredible to me to this day.
Yes, your mother sounds like she's quite an incredible woman. Back in Amsterdam, you received more help from the underground and were liberated by the Canadians. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was in May of 1945, almost to the day, 5 years after the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. And the Canadians liberated that part of the Netherlands. It was a rather strange feeling. Obviously, there was a lot of jubilation in the streets, but there was something missing. Is Dad coming home? Mom said no. Is Oma and Opa coming home? No. How do you explain arrest? How do you explain a situation like that to a 10-year-old? We lived, and I always like to explain this, especially when I speak to youngsters. When liberty and freedom and privilege is taken away, it is very, very difficult, obviously. The thing that I think especially youngsters don't think of, now freedom has come back. It's not like hitting a switch. Whoop-de-doo, we're free. I remember going to school. I didn't have to worry. Playing soccer with friends. Is anybody looking for me? Can I do this? Can I go outside by myself? It took a strange adjusting period. And it was about 3.5 years later, almost 4 years later, in 1949, that we came to America for a better life. My mother knew somebody in New York. Laws were totally different from what they are today. And if you'll permit me, if the time is, I have to tell you just a little story. Even amongst a background of tragedy, there is even some humor. And that was in those days, it took 5 years to become a citizen. My mom was so proud to come to America. 5 years later, whatever test she took, she became a citizen. The laws as they were in those days meant, had I been 1 year younger than I was, I would have become a citizen automatically on her papers. But since I was a year older, I had to wait a year and take my own test to become a citizen. So, Mom was a citizen, I wasn't, and whenever we got tongue-in-cheek on her part, whenever we got in a little argument, she'd say, all you foreigners are alike. Anyway, a little humor. Anyway, we came to America first to New York City and then to the West Coast.
I understand that many years after the war, you had an opportunity to visit Holland. How did that come about?
Wow. I had never been back. I went to school here. I was in the U.S. Army here. And I had never been back to Europe. I have 3 sons, and one of my sons, who lived in Washington State, he and his wife, because of his job, got transferred to Belgium, country just south of Holland. And he called up one day and he says, hey, Dad, why don't you guys come out for the holidays? I was so excited about that because I had never been back. But what excited and made me sad at the same time, for all of these years, I thought of Klaus and Rufina so many times. What happened to those dear people and that little farm? And then I always got the sick feeling. I had no idea where this place was. My mom was quite ill at the time. And I told her that we were going to Europe. Again, I'd been in America for over 55 years. I said, where was the farm? And she thought, and then she came up with a weird name, the Veneburen. And I thought about that, and I recognized the name was the name of the dirt road that the farm was on. I says, great, Mom. Where? What am I going to do? Go to a foreign country and ask them about the dirt road? She didn't know. I went to the library, looked through a bunch of strange names, and there was one name, Mackinga. And the more I looked at it, I said, nah, it doesn't mean it. I asked Mom. I said, was the village, was the farm in Mackinga? No. That's all we had to go on. We went to Europe, spent a week in Belgium. And by the way, if anybody have been in Belgium, the Belgian waffles in Belgium are really good. When you go into the subway, terrific. And we spent a week there, and then we drove from Brussels to Amsterdam. It's only about a 2.5-hour drive. I got a big kick out of it because as soon as we got to the Netherlands, I could still read some of the advertising signs. The only thing I remember, specifically downtown Amsterdam, I never remembered when I was a kid the Golden Arches. I didn't remember those, but they were in Amsterdam. And we became tourists. We took the canal cruise. went to the Rijksmuseum, and of course went to through the Anne Frank house. We spent several days in Amsterdam, and I told my son, I said, that Makkenga doesn't mean anything. It's another hour-and-a-half drive. He says, we're here, let's do it. We drove, and here's this little sign, Makkenga. Didn't mean, even when I saw it spelled out. We drive off the highway, and there's this quaint village, and my son was driving. I said, there's a little bank. I remember the name, Rabobank. And by the way, that's in December of 1992. Never been back, ever. I go into the bank, my daughter-in-law, my son, and my wife and I'm going to go make a fool of myself. A lady says, can I help you? I said, yeah. I said, this is embarrassing. I said, we're from America. I said, I got to ask you. I said, have you ever heard of a dirt road called the Fijneburen? I'm ready to tuck my tail between my legs and get out of there. She says, sir, excuse me. She says, would you repeat that name? I said, I don't know. Maybe I don't tell it the right way. I said, the Fijneburen? She says, that's about 3 miles from here. I said, you're kidding me. That was so, I get goosebumps every time I get to that part. 3 miles from there. We didn't know where we were, and we had found it. We were, the four of us, we were hugging, we were crying, having found a place that we didn't know where we were. In my case, stepping back into my history of almost 60 years, we were making a racket. The manager came out, he probably thought it was a holdup or something. Anyway, he asked us to come in the office, and I asked him outright, I said, have you ever heard of the Klaas and Rufina Post family? Which was kind of a strange question because by that time they would have been, I don't know, 126 years old or something. And he said, yes, I have. I said, no. I said, how did you know them? He says something to the effect his predecessor introduced them, and they used to bank here. And that's when I asked what happened to them, and he said, well, they passed away about 20 years ago. And every time I get to that part, it still bothers me. You know, all I could think of, why didn't I go back sooner? Give him a hug. Thank you for saving my life. He said that farm is still there. He said, I don't know the people specifically, but I'm sure they'll let you look around. We walked out of that bank in a daze. We drove, we get to this dirt road, the Fijneburen. Thank you, Mom. She remembered the dirt road. And we drive about a quarter of a mile, and I said, there it is. I recognize the farmhouse. New roof, new paint, new barns, much more foliage. After all said, it's 60 years past. And I got out, and I knocked on the door, and I don't know, for whatever reason, nobody was home. I wanted to go inside to see if those boards were still there in the floor. 60 years later, maybe not. We walked around that farm for hours, and every time I got to the back of the farm, what a strangest feeling. That's the only place at dusk that I could play with homemade toys. I felt like I was 7, 8 years old again. It was weird. And this was in December. It was pretty frosty. I said, I want to go into that tree forest where I helped build the cave. We go in there, and for some reason we split up. My family goes one way, I go another way. Every time there is a rise in the ground, some loose dirt, I step on it, and talking to myself, is this where the cave could have been? We weren't in there for 10 minutes, and about 45 feet away, my son calls out, Dad, come here, I found it. And folks, there was a cave like I left it 60 years ago. It didn't have the twigs, the camouflage in the front anymore. But there it was, the thing that I helped build. It was the strangest feeling. I remember psychologically, I said, yeah, that must have been it. I was chewing up inside and said, yeah, that must have been it. Yeah, it was it. I had a little screwdriver on my chain, and I carved my mom and my initials in one of the tree trunks that was a cross hiding it. I mean, that was an unbelievable experience to find that after that many years.
Unbelievable. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming all the way to Colorado for this. If we could please give a round of applause for Peter Metzeler.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much to my friends, Senator Daphne Michelson-Janae, and to Pete Metzeler for the remarkable conversation we just heard. I know that these lessons will stay with all of us for a long, long time to come. My name is Sue Parker Gerson, and I'm the Senior Associate Director of Jewish Community Engagement for ADL's Central Division. As you heard, this is the 12th year that I have had the honor of producing this program. As I reflect on past Remembrance programs, I come away with 3 thoughts that I want to leave you with tonight. First, when we talk about the Holocaust, we tend to speak about the 6 million as if those that perished can be lumped together into a homogeneous group, and nothing could be further from the truth. Each story of those that survived and those that did not is unique and critically important. This isn't a story of 6 million Jews and approximately 5 million others. It is the story of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. If we recited end to end the names of all those murdered in the Shoah, it would take 11.5 years. Jewish tradition teaches us that a person that kills another human doesn't just end one life. They are responsible for the destruction of an entire world. For all of us, but especially those whose families, like mine, were personally affected by Hitler's mass murder, it's almost unimaginable to consider the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the great-grandparents that we would have had, if only. And it isn't just the Jewish community that was affected by this wholesale slaughter. Approximately 5 million other souls were also snuffed out just because of who they were. What might all of those individuals and their descendants have accomplished in addition to being alive for their families? A cure for cancer? Clean energy? World peace? We don't know, if only. Second, as a lifelong educator and learner, I cannot emphasize enough the power of education in ensuring that students of all ages are taught the history and lessons of the Holocaust. Our research has proven that students who hear first-person testimony from a survivor, like we just heard from Pete, are statistically more empathetic and more likely to get involved in social justice initiatives in college and beyond. What would it be like on our campuses if high school graduates from every state had a Holocaust education mandate like we have in Colorado? If only. And finally, I am inspired by the power of community. Tonight, our community includes survivors and their families, students, teachers, those of different faiths and of no faith, elected officials, and more. Let's not just imagine what might happen if only we continue to come together like this. We must say loudly and clearly and with one united voice, never again. Each of us has a role to play in creating a society that secures justice and fair treatment for everyone. To learn more about how you can get involved in ADL's work and advocacy, please visit our website, mountainstates.adl.org. Thank you to my incredible colleagues, to our program participants,
our volunteers, and especially to all of you here in the room and online for attending the 44th Annual Governor's Holocaust Remembrance Program. Drive safely and good night.